Well, it's delightful to be here, and it's amazing to see so many of you that I haven't seen in a long time. Special thanks to Esther for producing this. I'm just really tickled to be here and really excited to dive into learning evaluation, dive into the depths of it. So let me get us started with some slide sharing, and give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Great. And my preference is that if you are willing and able to share your video, that would be great. So I can sort of see how everybody's doing, see how I'm doing. Really, I'm keeping your attention going and stuff. That would be great. Let me move things around here a second so I can see you all. You're looking beautiful. Except for you, Rich. You know what Rich has done? Rich has convinced me next week to go hiking up a stream, up a river, and like 50-degree water. So it's going to be crazy, but if I don't come back, you can blame it on Rich James. All right, folks, here we are. This is session number 1. Whoops. Oops, wait. Let's open this up. How come we're not seeing that? Can you see the whole slide there? Or some of it's cut off? Huh. All right, well, let's just ignore that and hope that that goes away. I think that's my problem when I created the slide. Doesn't matter. All right, so we're going to talk about learning evaluation. Today is a deep dive on some of the fundamentals of evaluation, and we'll get into LTEM as well. Later in the week, we're going to dive into learner surveys and also the messiness involved in learning evaluation. But I want to ask you for your wisdom right off the bat. So this is Athena, the god of wisdom. So here's the question for you. Do you have a philosophy or approach to learning evaluation that you embrace? If so, what is it? And I'm getting us started. I'm jumping right in. I'll introduce myself in a minute. I'll introduce the whole workshop, etc. But I wanted to just get us thinking about learning evaluation from the very beginning. So you can put this in the chat. You know, do you have a philosophy or approach to learning evaluation? And you don't need to go into long, because I know you could, but yeah. Oh, Heather, you're nice. LTEM is better than Kirkpatrick. That's right. It's got twice as many levels as Kirkpatrick, so it's twice as good. All right, measure what is important to measure. Awesome. You know, I have to say I am thrilled with the turnout. You know, I know it's a cozy conference. I didn't know how many people would be here. I thought maybe there'd be 5 of you, but this is great. Sophie says the will way. Yeah, come on, Sophie. All right. This is great. I think it's good for us to, you know, sort of get thinking about what we believe about learning evaluation before we get into it. So that's great. I also like to start with us. When we talk about learning evaluation, I want to talk about us and our work, because the evaluation has to relate to what we do. So we're learning and performance professionals, and we help a lot of people in a lot of different jobs. And we help them in their current job, but we also can help them in their career. We can help them develop a strong sense of identity and confidence. We do a lot for them, and that can help them in their personal life, their finances, etc. So we should give ourselves some love. At the same time, you know, we sort of have an awesome responsibility if we're really making all these, having this influence on people and the organizations they work in. We have a responsibility. And one of the tools that we can use is learning evaluation. So I'm going to try to make the case over these next 6 weeks that learning evaluation is an important tool for us. So you can decide whether you believe that at the end of this. Let me ask you this other question. In general, Are you happy with the learning evaluation your learning team is able to do? And if you're out there on your own, if you're not in an organization right now, you can just you can answer this question in general, or you can answer it for the industry. So here are the choices. No, I am not happy. I would like us to make substantial improvements. That'll be choice A. No, I would like us to make modest improvements. That would be B. Yes, I'm mostly satisfied because we improve our evaluations on an as-needed basis. C. Yes, I am happy because we generally use sound research-supported evaluation practices. Yes, for us, additional focus on evaluation will not be worth the investment. That will be E, and then I do not want to say in public. All right, so choose one of these, A, B, C, or F. You can choose more than one if you like. A in all caps. All right, Shelley, B, C. All right, nice, sort of crossing the line there. All right. Okay. So looks like a majority of us are saying no on the no side, but we have pretty, maybe a bell curve there on some of this. All right, great. Thanks for thinking through. We're going to come back to this. I have some research to share later with you. I'm going to take you now through a history of frustration in learning evaluation. So it all began with Donald Kirkpatrick back in 1960, where he said, and this is the fourth of his classic 4 articles, the evaluation of training programs in terms of results is progressing at a very slow rate. About a decade later, researcher Ronald Burke said, for the most part, the benefits of industrial training, that's what they used to call it back then, have been taken on faith. Few demands have been made to evaluate it in a rigorous manner. Rob Brinkerhoff, one of my favorite learning evaluation gurus, with some notable exceptions, relatively little work has been devoted to making evaluations more useful and worthwhile. ASTD. Their research revealed that the actual practice of evaluation doesn't often follow the strict recommendations of evaluation literature. It's kind of a roundabout way of saying we're not doing good stuff. I was involved in some research with some really smart folks with the e-learning guild back in 2007. And we asked learning professionals, what do you think? Are you able to do the learning evaluation, the learning measurement you want to do? Only 20% said yes. Only 20%. Josh Bersin, in every year, 2005 to 2007, more than 90% rated measurement as the #1 or #2 area they would like to improve. This is towards maturity. They're UK-based. They were looking at what L&D leaders thought. Did a survey of them. 97% of those leaders want to improve the way they gather and analyze data and learning impact. That was in 2017. I got involved with the Guild again, 2018, and we asked people similar question. 52% said they want to substantially change what they're doing. Man, this is so depressing. All right, so is it different now? All right, well, we did tier 1 every year. We do a survey of the industry. And we asked a bunch of questions, but one of the questions we asked was, in general, is your learning team able to do the learning measurement it wants to do? And these were the results. 46% said, no, we want to make substantial improvements. That's almost half of us. Modest improvement, another 18%. Yes, we're satisfied, but we continue to make improvements on an as-needed basis, about a quarter of us. When I introduce myself, and most of you know me, but you know I'm like a research guy, right? So this one is kind of depressing for me. Yes, we are happy because we generally use sound research-supported evaluation practices. 4%. Yes, for us, additional focus on evaluation will not be worth the investment. 2%, and then 5% said they didn't know. So there's sort of this general malaise in learning evaluation in our field. And it's been going on for an awful long time. So I'm hopefully going to give you some hope. Hopefully give you some hope. Yeah, that's good. As we go forward. We can do stuff. It's not going to be perfect, but we can do stuff. Notice 64% of us, 2/3 of us, say no, we're not able to do what we want to do. Okay, so now let's step back and think about, let's take it outside of L&D for a minute so we can think about this with a clean slate without any biases. So this is a farmer. Why might he want to analyze the growing rates, crop yields, infestation rates, etc.? Why would he want to do that? Well, he wants to help him make his most important decisions. And, you know, my wife's in the agriculture space. She helps farmers with their business acumen and lending and stuff. And she's like, let me know that, you know, the old image of farmers as this, you know, salt of the earth kind of person out there in the field is true, but it's also like, look at this. This is big data and smart farming. So it's a lot more sophisticated than we might think. So what criteria should he have for the data he's collecting? Things like this: the data should be accurate. It should be relevant to his needs, to the needs of his business. It should be highly predictive. In other words, like the color of the soil may not be that important, but maybe the nutrients, that would be more predictive. It should also be cost effective. One of the things we talk about in evaluation is ROI. We need to do ROI, but we don't think about ROI for evaluation. Most importantly, it should enable his organization to make its most important decisions. What about us in L&D? We don't dress this fancy anymore, but you know, we should have the same kind of goals, right? And here's the thing to make us make our most important decisions. What are, why don't you put in the chat and just sort of brainstorm real quick, what are our most important decisions? What are the most important decisions you have to make to be effective? I have a list for you I'll share in a minute, but what do you think? What do we do that makes us good? What decisions do we have to make? Where to spend our time and energy? Yeah. We need to change the program. Which approach is most valuable? Choosing between learning platforms and tools. Yep. Adapt training so that it's applicable, IRL. Is that in real life? Is that what IRL means? Okay. What to improve next? What type of training is necessary? What kind of strategy? Is our program delivering the value the business expects? What makes the client happy? Very good, Rich. Who should be on the team? Do we need? Okay, so there's a zillion things, right? Yeah. Okay. Lots of things. Are we able to use evaluation to make our most important decisions? So here's some of the things that I thought of. I'll just let you skim those. And of course, there's dozens more. Okay, it's good to think of evaluation in these terms, that it's all about helping us make decisions. Okay. Now, this is really important, and you're going to see this theme throughout our discussions. We measure to make something happen. You know, I go speak at conferences, and invariably there's somebody in the audience that says, Will, let me tell you what we do at our company. We gather all this amazing data. We never even look at it. Or we gather this data and we don't know what it means. We're paralyzed. So that's not good. So we want to do evaluation for a reason, to make something happen. What? To make better decisions so that we can take better actions, and that we can get the reputation or gain or earn the reputation so that we can have the resources and autonomy to do good learning designs of things we know need to make our learning effective. So I really do think this might be the main, if you can take this away, you're getting a lot. All right, so you might want to know, who am I? Why should you listen to me? So this is me. I am a principal at Tier 1. I got a really good discount on that shirt. You might want to know about Tier 1 Performance. We are a full service performance improvement company. We have about 330 employees. We are growing all the time. What we do is we help organizations activate their business operations and learning and development, learning performance strategies. And we do that through the people side of the work. In our mission statement, we aim to help people do their best work. And we like to make the world of work healthy, productive, and rewarding environment. We use processes and we bring teams together through a holistic approach. Like, I'm a learning guy, but we also have change management experts. We have communications experts. We have technology experts, creatives, research, data scientists, et cetera, on really big projects where you're really trying to make enterprise-wide improvement. It's good to bring a whole team together. I'm not a big fan of awards and things, but here's what I want to point out on this slide. So we've been voted one of the best places to work. We're employee owned. We are certified B Corp, and it's particularly good in the workers category, helping workers do good work. And I tell you this because if you are interested in looking at opportunities, please consider Tier 1. Get in touch with me. All right, so I'm at Tier 1 now, but before that, I was at Work Learning Research for 22 years. It's my research and consulting practice. It's now my hobby sometimes. What I did back then was I went through sort of translating, compiling scientific referee journals on learning, memory, and instruction, and translating that research into practical recommendations, also putting that research into research to practice reports. They're still available, by the way, on Work Learning Research website. My wife says, hey, why do you still do all that work learning research stuff? I said, well, it's just a hobby now. I don't think she always believes me, but it's still a hobby. If you're interested, you can still get these things there. They're all free. One of the research to practice reports I wrote was back in 2007 on measuring learning results. I got really interested. You know, I'm like a research guy, but I realized partway along the way in my career that, well, research is great and we should follow that as much as we can when we're designing learning, but that's not enough. We need to develop feedback loops so we can see how well we're doing, know what to keep, know what to improve. So I started getting interested in that, wrote a book, Performance-Focused Learner Surveys. This is the second edition of the book, and also came up with the LTEM report. And I've been thinking about learning evaluation and studying it for a while now. But I will say this, you know, people say, Will, you know, you're like an expert on learning evaluation. And I always feel a little bit like, well, yeah, but, you know, first of all, learning is complicated. And then you put learning evaluation on top of that. And then you think about the different levels and different stakeholders. There's the learners, there's the organization, et cetera. Really complex. So none of us should beat ourselves up about it. I do feel I have a lot more to learn. And I think as a field, we also have a lot more to learn as well. I come at learning evaluation not as a data scientist, not as a psychometrician, but as a learning guy. And you'll see one of my themes is that we need to make sure that our learning evaluation is aligned with the way humans learn. All right, so just so you can put this workshop experience in perspective, here's what we're going to be doing. We're doing a live session now on some learning evaluation fundamentals. Next week is self-paced. We're going to have a chance for discussion. Got some homework for you to do. That's when I'm off being probably drowned by Rich James and his crazy ideas. And then the following week, we'll have live session 2. We're focused on learner surveys. We'll introduce that. Then we'll come back and do some advanced topic on learner surveys. We'll do some writing exercises, another self-paced week. And then we'll finish up on some common mistakes in evaluation, and I will dive into the messy world of actually doing evaluation studies, control groups, time series analysis, fun stuff like that. Also on Thursday, November 3rd, I've got office hours, and this is New York times, but at 12 noon and 8 p.m. we try to separate them in time so that no matter where you are in the world, you can have a reasonable opportunity to meet with me. We'll tell you how to get hooked up with those later. All right. So we're going to talk about fundamentals, and you're like, well, why do we need fundamentals? Well, we know we need to make sure that our learning evaluation is aligned with human learning. There's a lot of common mistakes that get made. We want to avoid those, and we want to help us make good evaluation decisions. So let me start. So measurement is sort of like this street lamp in a way. I love this metaphor. It illuminates some things, but it doesn't illuminate everything. And so if you see a dashboard, right, of learning evaluation statistics, you're seeing some aspects of the learning. There's other things you're not seeing, either because we're not measuring them, or we're measuring them poorly, or there's some problem. And so it's very easy to be fooled. It's very easy to be captured by a pretty dashboard. I'll tell you a story. I was at one of the world's top consulting companies, and I gave a little presentation, and I sat on the side of the room, and then their learning evaluation team was giving a presentation. And I had known the data that the learning evaluation team was using, but what they were showing was this new way of visualizing the data. And so they got up there and they had this beautiful dashboard, and you could click on numbers and you could drill down, and it was great. And the head of learning got up in the back of the room and said, "This is exactly what we need." And I just kept quiet. I talked to the learning evaluation team later, but the data underlying this beautiful dashboard was complete crap. It was based on really poorly designed learner surveys. And so it looked good, easy to fool, but not so great. Okay, so what are we trying to do when we evaluate? We're trying to be accurate and reduce error. So let's say we have a single dimension, something gets measured on, like temperature or miles per hour or something like that. So we want to measure kilometers per hour, miles per hour. So if the true speed is this, and we measure at that level, there's no error. We hit it perfectly. If it's slightly off, that's an acceptable level of error. If it's way off, like 14 miles per hour off, that would be 9 kilometers off. No, I don't know. That would be unacceptable. That's way too far, right? But officer, my dashboard said I was doing great. Now, oftentimes what we measure is more complex than on a single measure. We're measuring human beings, right? So really more complex. But let's look at this in terms of like a manufacturing line. So there's all kind of things we might measure on that factory line. Some are more important than others. So what do we do then? Well, we need to prioritize and pick out the things that are important. We have to do that in measuring learning as well. What are we going to measure? We tend to measure what's easiest to measure, not what's most meaningful to measure. In fact, this is so important that I added a quote into the second edition of my book to highlight that. One thing we can do to reduce error is to take multiple measures. So all measurement has errors. We want to minimize errors. One way to do that is take multiple measures. Okay, another fundamental thing to know about learning evaluation that should put you all at ease is there's no perfect measurement tool. You can see in the description before, I love this quote by Deborah Bandlos. Our measures are not perfect, but they should instead be thought of as approximations. particularly, and notice she's author of the book on measuring in the social sciences, because measuring human beings, is complicated. So what we want to do is we want to have reasonable proxies for the constructs we're targeting to measure. You got it, Rich. By the way, I'm not really good at multitasking and watching the chat as we go along. What I've done in this, I'm gonna have time for us to have conversations, reflections at certain points as we go through. If you put something in the chat, I may not see it. This is a brilliant book by Jerry Muller. What he says, and this is like so important. He says, look, data can be really valuable, but data can also be dangerous. It can give us the wrong impression of things. It can make us make decisions that we don't want to make. He's got examples from education, from policing, from healthcare, et cetera, where having data actually causes a problem. I'll let you read this quote from him. So you may have heard in the headlines, and I'm not a medical expert, but I've read in the headlines that if you get some medical tests, you will actually have a worse health outcome because you took the test. Due to false positives, et cetera, you might get surgery, for example, that you don't need, or that's going to cause some problems. So just a warning. In the world now, everybody wants data, but data is not a universal good. It can be misleading. So it's helpful to have that skepticism. So don't do this. Don't bow at the God of measurement. Let us be humble, skeptical, and wise. Okay, question for you. When designing learning, should we base our learning methods on the preferences of our learners? I'm going to give you two choices here. Learners are fairly good judges of their own learning, so we should trust their intuitions to inform our learning design decisions. Learners are not often good judges of their own learning. I know some of you have seen a variation of this question earlier. All right. But don't be fooled by these folks that have jumped in there. Come on, nobody's going to root for the learners? Come on, how many of you do design thinking? Huh? Thank you. How many do design thinking? Well, isn't that asking the learners what they think? Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay, you might know the answer to this question, but all right. So I ask this question a lot because it's pretty important. There's all this research to show that learners have some good intuitions about learning, but a lot of times some bad intuitions about learning. And so we have to be careful when we ask them questions that we are supporting them in their decision making, that we're asking them the kind of questions that they can answer, et cetera. We'll see this more clearly when we get into talking about learning evaluation, or learner surveys. But it's a general point, and it's weird, isn't it? What's the number one thing? Well, the number one thing we measure is actually completion rates, but the second thing just up there is learner surveys. Okay. Okay, another fundamental thing we need to know about when we think about learning evaluation is remembering, or remembering and forgetting. I put a picture of an elephant in there because I like elephants, and elephants are famous for their ability to remember. I don't have evidence for that, but I still like the story. So just to take you through, we have, this is during the learning situation, and this is after the learning situation. And over here, we have more remembering. This is where we are more successful. We have created training that when they go back to their workplace, their work site, their work environment, they remember what they've learned at the right instant, in the right situation. And we've been more successful at the top. At the bottom, we have less remembering. That's where we've been less successful. So this is a learning curve and a forgetting curve. And I like to say here that this is still one of my finest moments in PowerPoint. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. All right. So, I mean, let's think about this, right? Our learners started here. We got them up a learning curve, but they pretty quickly forgot. So what does that tell us? So have we been as successful as we wanted to? Probably not. So this is a fairly steep forgetting curve. It's sort of a mediocre learning curve. I could have drawn one that's, the learners learn more or learn more quickly. I could have drawn a forgetting curve that has a less steep slope to it. This is ideal, right? We'd hope that we can do something during learning. If we could design learning in such a way to minimize forgetting, that would be pretty cool. Now, ideally, what we hope for is that learners continue learning on the job afterwards. That we've set them up for this during learning and after learning. So this after learning future really depends on two things: the design of the learning and the after learning follow-up. But, and I know you're saying, well, Will, this is great. You're talking about learning design here, but what about learning assessment? What does this have to do? All right, well, if we do an end of course assessment right at the top of their learning curve, what are we really getting from that? Well, if we measure here, in some ways, a bias metric, right? Because we know a lot of people are going to slide down a steep forgetting curve. What it is a snapshot of people's understanding at that point in time, their comprehension. What we're less able to show or know is whether they're going to be able to remember or whether they're going to apply or be able to apply what they've learned. To get perfect insight into this, we need a delayed test. We can get some hints about remembering an application here, but really, slam dunk, we really need a delayed test. So this distinction between understanding and remembering is really critical in learning evaluation. Does it matter where we measure? Well, in some research with the e-learning guild, we asked, how similar was the assessment context to the learning context? Well, mostly in the same context, 91% in the similar or the same context where people learned in. Does this matter? Yeah, it actually does matter. This is the classic experiment on context-based memory, Smith, Glenberg, and Bork. They found that if you test someone, if you ask them to remember, in other words, in the learning room, the place where they learned, they do better by a substantial amount than if you test them in a different room. This is the context alignment notion, et cetera, different words for it. But it's sort of a common phenomenon. There's a bunch of research on it. I'll just let you read it. And it's really not all the research. I'm just joking with you, but there's a lot of research on this. So fundamental. So we have to be careful about the context when we measure as well. What influence does that have? I love this. This is a taxonomy from Sharon Schrock and Bill Coscarelli. Basically what they say, the best thing we can measure is putting somebody in the real world situation and having them measure. So if you're training someone to drive a forklift in a warehouse, where's the best place to measure them? What's the best way to measure them? You put them in a forklift in a warehouse. Well, if you can't do that, maybe it's too dangerous, you could simulate that. If you can't do that, you use scenario-based decisions. If you can't do that, you use memorization or knowledge level questions. If you can't do that, you might give people credit for attending a workshop, or they're affiliated with the, ASTD. Maybe you'd give them credit for knowing something. Now, what they said is that, this is in the second edition of their book. They said, look, we'll certify you as competent above this level. Below that, we'll give you maybe quasi-certification. But in the third edition of their book, they literally raised the bar. And they said, no. Level C, scenario-based decisions, represent the last level of certification that can be considered to assess an ability to perform on the job. Level D represents the first quantum jump away from fidelity in assessment and should be used with caution. What do we do all the time? Knowledge checks. By the way, this is this 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 tower here is actually a tower from Boston. It's the Beacon Hill Monument, and there's a famous colonel at the top of that, Colonel William Preston, I think, and he was the guy. This is U.S. history. The rest of you can ignore, but he's the guy that said, "Don't shoot till you can see the whites of their eyes." And in some ways, that's relevant to what we do in learning evaluation. We need to get close enough to get the real information. Okay. It's not like Bloom's taxonomy. No, no. I'm thumbs down on Bloom's. I'm not going to go into why. If you're interested, I can send you an article on that. But Bloom's was originally aligned with how people were grading, testing people in schools. The new versions still aren't quite work related in my mind. All right, so this is, you don't need to know the details of this. This is an example of a learning development process. Sometimes at tier 1, we'll add sustain and enable to the end of this. But what I want to talk about is evaluate. You notice we tend to put evaluate toward the end. ADDIE, where is evaluate and ADDIE? It's at the very end. Well, that's problematic because we really sort of ignoring a couple things. Number one, we're ignoring formative evaluation. So we go do the discovery phase. We should do a little evaluation. Well, how did that go? What can we do better for next time? What do we need to take into the define phase? We do the define phase. We should do some formative evaluation, et cetera. Also, when we think about evaluation at the end, sometimes we create our learning programs and then we go, well, how should we evaluate it? No, that's terrible. We should do the exact opposite. We should start focusing on evaluation from the very beginning. We'll see that theme as we go forward. Okay. I probably have a lot of questions here, but I'm noticing the time. And I have to say, I put a whole bunch of things into this presentation. I really didn't time it, so I don't want to go over. So we'll hold the reflections till later. Just to summarize the stuff we're looking at, I'm going to take you through eight sort of learning points that I wanted to get across in the discussion so far. I'll let you read them. For those of you who are learning science mavens, you'll know that this is a little space repetition for you. All right, let's talk about LTEM. Thank you. I saw some of you smiling. All right, thank you. So LTEM. LTEM is the Learning Transfer Evaluation Model. It is a 1-page framework, and there's a 34-page report that goes along with that. It went through 12 iterations and ended up with one in 2018, which is sort of the first really public-facing one. Fortunately, we did not end up on the 15-level model of learning evaluation. And I got a lot of feedback on this from learning experts like Julie Dirks and Clark Quinn, from evaluation experts like Rob Brinkerhoff, Ingrid Guerra-Lopez, and a bunch of really smart practitioners. I will tell you, you're the first people I'll tell. I am thinking about version 13. I got some ideas about that. So maybe coming out in the next year. Won't be a big change, just some slight wording changes and things. Okay. So, but why do we need a new evaluation model? Will we have one? Thanks, Heather. Well, why do we need one? Well, we've already seen the problems. A lot of us are not happy with learning evaluation. There's biases. We measure, for example, at the end of learning, when we know there's some issues with that. We measure in the learning context when we know there's issues with that. There's a lot of biases. So that's some problem. Also, we make a lot of common mistakes. A few years ago, I decided, I noticed some common mistakes we were making. And I said, I'm going to compile a list. I'll write a blog post on this, an article. And I thought I might get 5 or 10 or 15. Well, 54 common mistakes. By the way, if you're interested in learning evaluation, we're going to talk about these things later. And in these links in here, by the way, you don't need to copy these down. I'll get you all these. Okay, so we've got those problems. What about our dominant model? Kirkpatrick four-level model, you'll find me calling it the Kirkpatrick-Cassell four-level model, because it turns out that Raymond Cassell actually originated the four-level idea, and then Donald Kirkpatrick labeled the levels and popularized it. So I think both gentlemen deserve credit. But what about this model? It was born in the 1950s. What do we think about it? And there's been a lot of grumbling over the years from practitioners. But what do the research scientists say? This is a top-tier journal, and they said this: the Kirkpatrick framework has a number of theoretical and practical shortcomings. It is antithetical to nearly 40 years of research on human learning, leads to a checklist approach to evaluation, and by ignoring the actual purpose for evaluation, risks providing no information of value to stakeholders. That's pretty damning. Here's another one. Kirkpatrick's framework is not grounded in theory, and the assumptions of the model have been repeatedly disproven over the past 25 years. Now, I think these criticisms are a little bit over the top. I see no model's perfect, number one, and I see some good things that the Kirkpatrick-Cassell model did and some bad things it did. We'll get into those in just a second. One of the things that I believe is that models should nudge us, send messages, or nudge us directly into doing good things and push us away from doing bad things. So you can see the subtitle of the report. I'm going to use an example of ADDIE. Probably all familiar with ADDIE, most famous model in learning and development. In our learning trends report, it was the #1 thing that learning teams are using around the world. So ADDIE sends some good messages, and it sends some bad messages. So it sends a really good message that we should do some serious assessment before we design and develop. Good message. It sends a good message that we should do some serious evaluation. Now, it puts evaluation at the end there, so that's not a great message. The other thing that ADDIE does, it has a connotation of a waterfall, a step-by-step process that's not iterative. Now, it doesn't have to be that. You can certainly circle around, but a lot of people do take it to be a one-way street. That's a bad message that it sends. So I'm just using ADDIE as an example that models send good messages, some bad messages. What messages does the four-level model send? Okay, some really beneficial messages. Don't just focus on learning, focus on results too. Absolutely, level 3 and 4, behavior and results, really important. It also puts learner opinions at level 1. That's a really good thing. We should know that those are sort of be deprioritized. It sends some harmful messages, some that are sent and some are missed being sent. So it does not warn us against ineffective evaluation practices. It doesn't, for example, say, hey, measuring attendance is really not that good a thing to measure. So it doesn't warn us against some things. It ignores the role of remembering. It's just learning. There's no understanding versus remembering. Okay, so it's just silent on that. And I think here's my the thing that I think is most important. That it puts level 2 learning all in one bucket. Now, think about all the things you can measure on learning. You could measure the regurgitation of trivia. You could measure the recall or recognition of meaningless information or meaningful information, but also you could measure decision-making ability, competence. You can measure task competence. You can measure skills. That's a wide continuum from trivia to skills, but we put it all in one bucket. And then the problem becomes some one of our senior people says, we need to measure level 2. Okay, let's do a knowledge check. By the way, I think I'm going to turn my light on. There we go. I don't know if that makes a difference. Okay. So what are LTEM's 8 tiers? And by the way, I call them tiers so they're not confused with the levels of Kirkpatrick. This is the framework without any words in it, but I just wanted to show you. So the ones at the bottom I made as red because these are not as good. Yellow is mediocre, green is good. Sort of like a traffic light here in the United States. And I was thinking green was good, red was bad. I learned subsequently to developing the model that in some cultures, Red is better, red is best, red is lucky. So I didn't think about that. I wasn't going for that, but that was my original thinking. The green is good. So let me take you through attendance. This is when the learner signs up, starts, attends, or completes a learning experience. Note the fine print here. This metric is inadequate to validate learning success because learners may attend, they may complete our courses, but maybe they don't learn, or maybe they learn the wrong things. What about this? Activity, tier 2. Learner engages in activities related to learning. We can measure attention, interest, participation, but look at the fine print. These metrics are inadequate to validate learning success because learners may do these things but not learn. That doesn't mean we shouldn't measure these, but we shouldn't be reporting these out as our metrics of success. Oh yeah, we had a course and 80% of the learners engaged in the discussion in the forum. So what? Did they learn anything good there? Did they reinforce good stuff? Did they learn bad stuff? Okay. Tier 3 is divided into 2 levels. Tier 3A, this is the learner is queried in a way that reveals insights related to learning effectiveness. Tier 3B, the learner is queried in a way that does not reveal insights on learning effectiveness. This is where you focus on learner satisfaction, course reputation, etc. Now, learner perceptions, most of the time we measure these by surveys. They don't have to be surveys. It could be other methods. But when we talk about surveys, this would be traditional smile sheets. These would be performance-focused learner surveys. And note that I am the guy who wrote the book on performance-focused learner surveys, but even I say such measures can hint at outcomes which should be augmented with objective outcome measures. All right, knowledge. Learner answer questions about facts and terminology. Knowledge rested, and note this has the distinction between understanding and remembering. So knowledge recitation during or right after the learning event, and knowledge retention after several days or more. Okay, fine print, usually inadequate because knowing or remembering terminology does not fully enable performance. I believe the same thing that Schrock and Coscarelli believes. Okay, so tier 5, getting to the good stuff. This is the first tier where we're really going to be able to certify something related to our ultimate goals. Learner makes decisions given relevant realistic scenarios. We still have the distinction between understanding and remembering. Let me give you an example. This was a question used in an actual learning evaluation. And this was a learning program designed to teach entrepreneurs about how to run a business, small business. And so what we did was we created these scenario questions. And for each question, we validated it. Then we created 2 clones. So we gave one of the clones as a pre-test, one as a post-test, one as a delayed post-test. I could have picked lots of different variations of those questions. I picked this one because Elaine is my daughter's name and my wife works in sustainable agriculture. Okay, now for this same evaluation, we also looked at their business plans. That would move it up to tier 6 because that's an actual practice product. So tier 6 is learner performs relevant, realistic actions and decision-making. Okay, so tier 7 is transfer. This is behavior change. When the learner uses what was learned to perform work tasks successfully is clearly demonstrated through objective measures. They can do it either on their own, full transfer, or with an assist. And then tier 8 is the effects of transfer. And I want to point out something about the effects of transfer. I put a hint in here that it doesn't have to just be the business results. It could also include outcomes affecting other stakeholders, learners, for example, coworkers, family, friends, the organizations, community, society, and the environments. Don't have to measure all these, but just as a hint that there's many different outcomes we might look at. So this is the typical kind of KPIs that we look at when we're looking at tier 8. I put up maybe 20 of them, but there's thousands different things depending on the organization. All right, so just to be clear, tier 7 and 8 are work performance, tier 6, 5 on down are performance during learning. Sometimes there's overlap here, but for the most part, separate. So everybody wants to know, Will, how does this compare to the 4-level model? All right, so level 1 in Kirkpatrick cell is reaction. That's the same as tier 3. You'll notice that the 4-level model is silent about the bad, the not to validate based on activity or attendance. Level 2 learning, and again, this is where this real power of LTEM comes in. LTEM actually has learning wisdom baked into it to separate out learning into knowledge, decision-making competence, and task competence. Level 3 behavior is the same as transfer. Level 4, same as results. There's got some specifics in here, and the folks that use the Kirkpatrick model have some specifics in there as well that differ slightly. But that's it, basically. So now, how do you use this thing? Well, a simple way is to use it to do a gap analysis. Where are we now? Right now, we're doing mostly measuring attendance completion rates, and we're using poorly designed learner surveys, smile sheets. Where do we want to be later this year? Maybe we'll, use some performance-focused learner surveys, and we'll use some scenario questions on some of our courses. Maybe next year we'll take it even higher on some of the things. One of the things I want to emphasize is you don't want to, for any particular course or learning intervention, you don't want to measure all 8 tiers. It's too much of an investment. Now, every once in a while, maybe, but you got to pick and choose because it costs money to evaluate. Okay, so simple gap analysis is one way. We can also sort of think, use LTEM to sort of conceptualize what we want to measure, thinking first from our overall goal and measuring backwards. We can also think about credentialing. We've got a bunch of organizations that create trainings. Well, some of them are more rigorous than other trainings, right? How do you know how good they are? Well, maybe one way is to use LTEM to certify. We also have learners that have gone through a lot of learning. Well, did they go through a really rigorous learning? Did they really, was it just easy to get through? Well, we could use LTEM in this way. So let's say we provide some really good scenario-based questions. Then we could say something like this: those who met the requirements performed successfully on an LTEM Tier 5 assessment, showing competence in making decisions in challenging realistic scenarios. So certification is another way this can be used. This is one of my favorite ways, spurring improvements in learning design. So basically introducing LTEM to a learning team, getting them to think about, okay, these are all the things we could measure, setting evaluation objectives then, using LTEM. What should we measure? Doing that before we set our learning objectives. What we do with our learning objectives, often we say things, the learners will be able to define, the learners will be able to explain. And what that does is it gets us thinking, well, how do we then assess? We're going to have to ask them some knowledge questions. You got to flip that around. Go with the evaluations first. So an example, I want to train sales managers in being able to coach their sales reps. Okay, we're going to get together, we're going to brainstorm. What are all the ways we could evaluate? We could evaluate their actual sales afterwards, or the sales of the people they're coaching. Okay, we could evaluate that. We could use smile sheets. We could ask the learners what they thought of the learning. We could get the learners to tell us how well they coach. Okay, what else could we do? We could get the coachees, the sales reps. We could get them to evaluate the coaching of the sales managers. That's a good thing. And then you got all these things, right? And then you say, okay, what makes most sense? Well, I think probably the people who know coaching best are the people that are being coached. Let's go with that. Let's go with a performance-focused learner survey. Maybe next year we can do more. Okay, so you're negotiating that. So let me tell you about El Hammurabi. Dr. El Hammurabi. She got her doctorate, and her thesis, the first thesis on LTEM. And what she did, her hypothesis was if she introduced LTEM to a learning team, they would be inspired to create better learning evaluations. But also her second hypothesis was they will be inspired to use better learning designs. And that's exactly what she found. If you're interested, she's given me permission to share her dissertation with you. Okay, got to do a shout out to Matt Richter, wrote a great piece on how to use LTEM, not just for learning evaluation, but for these other things as well. Okay, so here's to summarize LTEM. These are the key messages, the key nudges that LTEM sends. This first one is the same as the 4-level model. In the report that we have, I have like 20 of these, but I'm just sort of highlighting them. I'll let you read through those. Yeah, thank you, Esther. We noticed that we're going over a little bit in time. There's not much more to go, but if you need to leave, that's cool. You'll be able to finish up with the recording. So just going to give you a chance to share your reflections on LTEM, or really where your organization is right now. So we're going to use the annotate option. And you're going to go, it may not look exactly like this, but you're going to go get the annotate thing, and then you could go to the stamp. Now, not yet. Don't start stamping yet. All right. And you're going to grab I like the heart stamp because it's nice and bright, but you can choose any one you want. And we're going to have like a form today, and you get to put the hearts in there. What are you doing today? What's your future goal? Not yet. All right. So not yet. And so today, future goal. So what do you typically measure today in your organization? If you're not in an organization, you can think about the field in general. And what would you like to add in the future if you could? And now you may add your hearts, moons, or lucky clovers. Okay, Julie. Julie has a big budget. Julie is a powerful person with lots of money, permission. She's developed a great reputation. She's going to do it all. All right. Some of you are really doing a lot of stuff there. Okay. This is great. I think I'm going to take a picture of this. Okay, awesome. And let's go on. Oops, let me, can you get rid of that, Esther? No, I can do it. I got it. Okay. All right, so here's the homework. So next week, because I'm off in the wilderness, we're going to have you take time to do some self-paced work. So I'm going to encourage you to read the LTEM report. I will make the link available in the chat. And also do the learner survey diagnostic for your organization. And I'm going to share that with you right now. So what you're going to want to do is print it out. On the first page, it's got an empty thing. You can say yes or not sure, yes or no. And then on the second page is sort of the answer key. Don't look at that before you do it. So there it is. And I am going to, oh, no, that didn't go to everyone. Hold on. Do you see that in the folder? I think it just went to Esther. Esther, don't send me a message. Okay, there we go. Oh, if you so after this session, Esther and I are going to coordinate a way to keep us communicating together. But if you could share your emails with me, if you're willing to do that, so I can like reach out to you directly. We got a whole bunch of people in the conference, but you have shown some interest. You don't need to share your email if it makes you nervous. I won't do anything else with them except for contact you about this. Also, you don't have to share your email if you have had enough. You don't want to do any more of this. So I asked you to share your learning evaluation philosophy. I thought a good way to end here was to share mine. I don't know if this captures everything, but these are some of the things I think about. And I'm going to I think I can hang out for a while if you want to ask questions, share your reflections. Did this get you thinking of anything? First of all, Esther, is that okay if we hang out a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Let me save the chat. Okay, good. So I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen. I can see you and you can see me. All right. Any reflections? Does this make you think anything in particular about your organization's learning evaluation practices? Anything good, anything bad? Do you have questions you'd like to ask?
I have a question, and maybe you'll address this in later sessions. But so like, for example, a project I'm working on right now, one of the things that we kind of consider a measure of success for the project is that people will be going to our subject matter expert less with basic questions and more so with advanced questions. But like, it's not measured objectively. Right now, this is just a very subjective measure, and we've never measured it objectively, so we don't have historical data to sort of show the difference. So, I mean, it doesn't feel quite scientific in my mind, but it also feels like, well, we kind of will be able to tell. So I don't know if you have thoughts on things like that.
Well, first of all, I think it's a good goal you have, right? I mean, it's in some sense, I've seen this a lot with like IT training. One of the things we hope is that we're not getting a whole bunch of calls to the help center, right? Particularly on stupid questions that we should have been able to train them for. It's a good thing to try to get. It's too bad you don't have historic data. Is there any way you can go back and get it? Is it captured somewhere? Okay, so
it's been like one-on-one training with people that's been happening. So yeah.
So well, I'm like brainstorming solutions in my head. None of them are really satisfactory. One is you could start measuring now and see if you get improvements going forward. I think the hard part is, how do you categorize?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what's basic and what's not? I mean, you'd have to develop a little system to help the person decide whether it's basic or not, right? And that might be complicated, and that might cause more stress, etc. But so I'm an optimist. I think there's ways to measure things if we just put our heads together and think about it a while. So
Okay,
yeah, don't give up.
okay, thank you.
Peter, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. No, I think that this is great, and also I think it's a great introduction session. So I introduced the LTEM model, I think about a year and a half ago, to the team that I'm working with, and we're really trying to use this as sort of our Bible of learning measurements. Are we perfect? For sure not, but we're trying to at least get there a little bit more. One of the things that we are facing, however, is when we get to the higher level tiers, how do you also prove things like causation? Because when we, for instance, do programs for our sales managers, we like to look at sales pipeline, and then do we have better close win ratio, and also what is the actual sort of GP that they've brought in. But on the other hand, that could also be due to market situation. That could be due to any number of factors.
Yeah.
And that is where we're sort of.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that in session number 4, and where we're going to talk about different sort of study designs that you can use. But you should know that it's normal to hit up against this wall, and it's expensive to do good studies. Like if you're using, randomized controlled trials or some variant of that, or pre-test to post-test, or time series analysis, it takes a lot more resources, time, logistics than handing out a learner survey.
Yes, that's true. No, but I look forward to session 4 then, because I know that there's probably not a perfect answer and a solution. And I think actually you made a great point also. Let's not try to measure everything on every tier, because it's just not worth the investment all of the time.
Yeah.
But how do we get to this fine balance? And that's.
Well, one of the things I do at tier 1 is to take clients through a process to evaluate things. And it's really kind of, this happens more than you'd think. So somebody says, hey, we want to measure ROI, or we want to measure, on the job results, right? And I say, great, well, we can help. And then we start going through the process. And then, we realize, well, geez, gathering these KPIs is like really hard or impossible, or is going to give us spurious data. And so then we have to backtrack. And then fortunately, we've got LTEM there to say, okay, well, what else do you want to do? What else can we measure? I had this project recently where we took people through this process. What metrics do you want to measure? Okay, and then what study design do you want to use? And then at the very last meeting, the client invited somebody new into the process. And this person said, they were sort of senior there, that, I just don't believe that you can go from training to business results. I think there's just too many variables. And he just completely blew up the original goal. It's just like, okay. And then, and it's funny because I had warned about, this possibility from the very beginning. Actually, it was good that I warned about it from the very beginning, because then everybody's there. Okay. Will you talk about the risks of evaluation? This is good. Now what's the next step? What's plan B? So we had a plan B, but it happens more often than you think, because it's so resource intensive, and there's suspicions about,
Yes,
what caused what. So great. Thanks for sharing.